you are about to listen to is me, Pastor Michael Bowman, as I think out loud about and try to apply the scripture to anything and everything that comes to mind. This usually happens in my car, so jump in and let's talk. So I'm reading a book called Shop Class as Soulcraft right now. And I'm only about a quarter of the way through it, but he points something out that I've been thinking about for a long time, but puts it in probably far more eloquent words than I could, about the idea of freedom from the natural world around us that modern society gives. Kind of the technological age has allowed us a false sense of freedom, and really it's a freedom to consume. So what he points out is that he, as a mechanic, can think about the history of something like a motorcycle or cars, and thinks about how it used to be that the user of these things had to put a lot more effort and knowledge and craftsmanship even into how they used it, let alone if they had to fix something on it. They had to have a certain amount of expertise. They had to learn how to care for these things and work on them and fix them, and then just the using of these different cars or motorcycles, especially, is what he focuses on. It took a certain amount of know-how, and over time a lot of those things were taken away. His example is that when he's writing the book, which I think it's not old book, but I think it's not the most recent of books either. He's writing about how, the latest Mercedes in his time doesn't even come with a dipstick to check the oil. Now he points out that, there's still the physical issues at play where you need a certain amount of oil. You can't have too little, you don't want too much. You still need that even in the newer Mercedes, but the user experience is that there is no dipstick, because it just has a little mechanism that will tell you on the dashboard when it's time to change the oil. So you don't have to know, you don't have to think about it. And so this is a kind of freedom from these natural physical constraints that people in the past would have had to endure because of the onset of, a more technological age. But he uses that as an analogy to think about so much else. I think about this often in the realm of food production. So my wife and I raise a lot of our own food, and we're trying to get to the point where we're raising the vast majority of our own food. And you learn so much about the food itself, the meat that you process, how to process when you're doing that, instead of just walking into a store and picking it up. And I don't necessarily have anything against that. Well, I kind of don't have anything against it. I might, I don't know. There is a kind of freedom that you have in that you don't have to take personal responsibility for the care of these animals, for the care of a garden, for making sure that you weed everything, for preserving the food. That is a kind of freedom, but what this gentleman points out, and I wish I could remember his name. I can't off the top of my head. I should, but I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Again, the book is Shop Class as Soulcraft. But he calls this a kind of like modern consumerist existentialism, and points out the fact that freedom to consume like this, to just have without the burden of needing to care for the vehicle and fix it when it breaks down, or to take the personal responsibility, in my analogy, to raise some of your own food, that this might feel like a kind of freedom because you are disburdened from the difficulty of taking on that extra responsibility. But actually what it does is it makes you captive to the whims of others, or to the work of others. So if you don't have any supply of food or any way to get food on your own, and there is a significant economic downturn, or the supply chain runs out or something like that, and your local grocery store is out of food, well, then you're done, right? You don't have anything. You are 100% completely reliant upon someone else. In his analogy, he talks about how with a vehicle, you're now, instead of working to fix something yourself, you're reliant upon a mechanic. But really, if you go to the mechanic, at least if you go to a dealership, you're probably never going to talk to the mechanic himself, where you sit in the shop and you watch what he's doing and you kind of understand, and he can kind of tell you what's worth doing and what's not. But you've actually got layers of bureaucracy in between you and that point. And so there's really no connection between you and the person that is taking responsibility for the fixing of your vehicle. And so you're totally disconnected from the physical reality. You're totally disconnected from the material world as it relates to vehicles or food, or I'm sure there are many other ways that we could kind of draw this out in our day-to-day lives. I've, for the last several years, referred to this idea as optimizing freedom. And I've talked about it before, this idea that true freedom comes through law. And what I mean by that is, take the analogy of a musician. A musician is not free to be creative with their instrument until they have practiced for a long, long time. So they've taken on the personal responsibility to work very hard within these constraints. And then it's within those constraints, after they've learned the various kinds of chords and notes and finger placements on a guitar or something like that, it's within those constraints that then they can find a way to be creative, and that they are free to do what they want. So freedom comes with law. Freedom comes with those clear boundaries. Well, the same thing is true in this conversation. To optimize freedom, this is what I have been calling it. To optimize your freedom, it actually takes taking on responsibility, removing some of those bureaucracies and others that you're relying upon. Not so that you don't rely upon other people. It's not bad to be connected and rely upon other people. There was a time when, you have several different people farming in an area, and they're neighbors, and they can go over to each other's houses and borrow things when they need, or get help when they need, and they come and help put up a barn when it needs. And okay, your tractor broke down, hey, do you have this particular part? Okay, well we'll trade that quick because that'll help you, and then you'll help me later. There's a lot of that going on. There's an interdependence, but it's within the realm of those who had already taken on personal responsibility to manage, raise, care for their own freedom, to do the things that would allow them to be independent of these outside forces, and yet interdependent with those who are closest to them. It's not wrong to have to rely upon somebody else, but especially in a globalized society, when we're relying upon somebody from the other side of the world, or when we're relying upon some no-face corporation, what that does is it means that there's no one who actually takes personal responsibility. There's no one that the buck actually stops with. And the more of those items, whether it be working on your own vehicle, whether it be learning how to raise some of your own food, whatever it might be, the more that you are trying to take those things onto yourself, so that you are taking on the personal responsibility to do that, that's actually where you're going to find the most agency. That's where you're going to find the most freedom. Because when your vehicle breaks down, your only option isn't, oh, well, I got to call these other people that I rely upon and they'll have to fix it sometime. So I can only do it when they're free. I can only do it if they say it's worth doing, and I really don't know if what they say is right. Instead, you have other options. I am not a mechanic. I am not naturally gifted in that way at all, but I've been trying to learn over the last few years. And so one of the first things I do when something breaks on one of my vehicles is, instead of calling it in, I just go on YouTube and I just say how to fix this, whatever it might be. And then I try it. If it seems reasonable, if I have the time. There was one thing this winter that I didn't do because it was in the negative degrees outside and I don't have any heated workspace. And so I just took that one in. But there are many things that I found that I can do with some extra time and a little bit of headache. I can do and I can learn how to do, especially with the good side of technology that we have, things like YouTube that will teach you how to do these things, even if you've never learned. And now all of a sudden, I'm not stuck the minute that something goes wrong with my vehicle. I have options in front of me. I have more options than I did when I had no idea what I was doing and I just had to take it to somebody else. I have more know-how to where I can talk to a mechanic and I can say, well, I think this is the problem. Here's why. I've kind of looked at it. I've messed around with it a bit. I've fixed this before, whatever it might be. I have opened up the possibilities that I have because I've worked hard within those constraints. Now, that's just a personal example, but I think that you can apply this to many different areas of life, and in that way work to optimize your freedom, not just be free from the material and physical burdens of life so that you're free to consume, but rather be free to actually act and to do in the world, to have true agency, true freedom.
Hey guys, I hope this has been helpful for you. If it has been, go ahead and rate it, review it, or share it with a friend, especially if you're in La Crosse, Wisconsin, or the surrounding areas. That helps me expand the audience and hopefully increase the impact of these ideas. If you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns on anything that I just talked about, you can reach me at pastormichaeljbowman@gmail.com. You can find more content from me, as well as information about the church that I pastor at ccc-pca.org. With that, I hope you can enjoy the many blessings of God today. Until next time.